From South Carolina Public Radio, this is the South Carolina Lede. I'm your host, Gavin Jackson, and this episode was recorded on March 21st, 2025 from South Carolina Public Radio studios here in Columbia. On this episode of The Lede, we look at week 3 of the tort reform debate, which resulted in some movement on the massive bill S-244. We take a look at the anti-DEI bill that's moving and grooving to the House floor, and we have a 2026 watch, a huge announcement that we will talk about shortly.
2026 watch.
You guys love that, right?
Yes.
But before we get to all that, I want to ask you, our listeners, to A, donate to the current South Carolina Public Radio pledge drive that's going on right now. Help us meet our goal. We can't do this without you. And B, after you do that at 800-256-8535 to donate, we're going to need you to call 803-563-7169. A lot of numbers to keep in your head, especially if you're driving right now. So make sure you pull over and call all these numbers and do that. Or if you're brushing your teeth, put the toothbrush down because we need your support. And that latter number you know well because that's our voicemail box number. We want to hear from you. Give us some fodder for the wind down. That can be food related. It can be seasonal. Have you adjusted to daylight saving time? Pollen's here. 803-563-7169. We have concluded week 3 of the tort reform debate. Three. And the tortoise is getting close to catching the hare and maybe to the finish line, if there is one. Hard to say. Don't really know. Things keep moving here. But while this bill S-244 has been before the Senate for 3 weeks, that doesn't mean we have been day in, day out listening to floor speeches, amendments, and debate. No, that might have been the case the first week, but that week ended on a cliffhanger when an amendment was proposed by Georgetown Republican Senator Stephen Goldfinch that would have gutted the major tort reform bill, and there weren't enough votes to stop it. So the Senate adjourned, and they took week 2 off. So there's a lot of behind-the-scenes negotiations as work was done to shore up support to defeat that amendment and move forward with a compromise amendment, something that took place on Tuesday, aka D-Day, according to Senate Majority Leader Shane Massey, who is the lead sponsor on this bill. Now, just after the start of session on Tuesday, Goldfinch took to the Senate well to take down his amendment and give his 2 cents on the state of play while proposing a strike and insert amendment that replaced S-244 with much of the House-approved liquor liability bill, H-3497, which is currently sitting on the Senate calendar.
The votes, I believe, and you can show me I'm wrong in just a minute. I hope you'll show me I'm right. I think the closest coalition we have, if we have one nowadays, and by the way, there's been a lot of blood spilled on this floor in the last 2 or 3 weeks for something that I believe will not even be taken up in the House. How much more blood do we have to spill on this floor for joint and several, knowing that they've already said, we're not taking that up? Where is the math, ladies and gentlemen? Where's the math? I want you to think carefully about that. I know all of you want something out of this bill. Something. Pick the section you want. Somebody wants something out of this bill, every single one of you. But where's the math? The math should exist around fixing liquor liability. It should. Does it exist around joint and several? I want you to ask yourself that very carefully. Does it exist around joint and several? Does it exist around protecting builders that don't follow building code? Does it exist around protecting insurance companies that are acting in bad faith by not paying claims? Does it exist in those other coalitions? Does it exist in an insurance company asking us to hold someone accountable for not wearing their seatbelt, even if it's not the proximate cause of the accident? Does that coalition exist in this body? Y'all know the answer to this. The answer to this is no. No. And yet here we are, faced with some giant glob of a monster of a bill. We call those in nice terms omnibuses. I guess the theory was we're going to try to buy everybody here something that they want. Buy is the wrong term for this body. I apologize for that. We're going to try to give everybody something in this bill. The problem is you also created an environment where everybody hates something about this bill. Everybody hates something about it. So what's the solution? How do we get out of this? If I had to say, y'all, unity is important, and it is, by the way. Unity is important. That doesn't mean uniformity. Let me make sure I'm clear about that. Unity does not mean uniformity. Unity is unity in purpose. What is our unity in purpose here? Ask yourself that question. What is our unity in purpose here? Is our unity in purpose corporate welfare? Give away to insurance companies? Help the tortfeasors, the people that do wrong? Is that our unity in purpose? This body, this august body's purpose? Our unity is rallying around those points? Y'all, we're in the wrong place.
However, the amendment isn't exactly the same as the bill that was unanimously passed by the House. That led to one of the biggest supporters of the liquor liability reform bill, Charleston Democratic Senator Ed Sutton, to explain the differences to York Republican Michael Johnson, who took to the well after Goldfinch.
Do you know I'm an adamant supporter of House Bill 3497, have shared publicly that when we get the opportunity to vote on that bill, that I'll be in support of that?
I did not know that, Senator.
Yes.
I know it, but I know the support you have for dram shop reform.
Absolutely. And we co-sponsored the dram shop bill as well, which is another solution, and kind of going into the liquor liability because it has a huge impact on my district. My approach to this has been all the above. I think there's a couple of solutions out there, and hopefully we'll come to a conference committee and pick out the best parts to get there. So when I heard that this was basically a direct copy of 3497, I was excited because it's a bill that I support. But when I started digging into the nuance of this and put it in a side-by-side comparison, it's kind of far off. Roughly, I'll say about 24% off. In this amendment from the House bill, sections 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 are removed. That primarily deals with the DUI portion penalties. So did you know, it's my opinion that this amendment is not a direct copy?
The DUI penalty increases were excluded from Goldfinch's amendment on the grounds of the Constitution's one subject rule, which means that every bill and resolution shall relate to but one subject, not three, and that shall be expressed in the title. H. 3497, for example, primarily, most of the bill is all about liability insurance. And then another section deals with the DUI penalties. So we're talking about two different things in that one bill. Now, debate lasted for about 5.5 hours. There's no fun way to say 5.
2 plus 3.
And it was bordering on a filibuster by Assistant Democratic Leader Ronnie Sabb of Williamsburg before lawmakers broke for a 15-minute-long recess, which, using Senate time, turned into 3 hours. 3, as Democrats and Republicans broke off into their respective meeting rooms for dinner and a briefing on Senator Michael Johnson's compromise amendment. Dear listener, I stayed. And during that 3 hours, that's when I made my adult purchase that we'll talk about in the wind down. That's a tease right there. But mainly, I wanted to stay because a lot of my coworkers couldn't, and I had no plans for my Tuesday night because it's a Tuesday, and I wanted to see this through. That being said, at 8:30, the caucuses returned to the chamber. They passed over multiple amendments on the desk to get to Johnson's compromise amendment. Now, he walked the chamber through it, answered questions, saying large parts of it had been negotiated between plaintiff lawyers and insurance defense attorneys. Just after 10 p.m., after explaining the amendment for an hour, Johnson moved to vote on the massive strike and insert amendment, and Senate President Thomas Alexander, as typical, announced the motion, then called for the ayes, at which point Senator Margie Bright Matthews, a Democrat from Colleton, called for a roll call vote, but Alexander continued on to the no votes and then said the ayes have it, even though several Democrat and Republican senators were not in the chamber at the time, including Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Luke Rankin. Listen to how this went down.
Mr. President, I'm going to move for adoption.
Pending question is the adoption of the amendment. All those in favor would say aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it.
So you could hear Senator Matthews there call for a roll call before the vote was done. Such moves have been honored in the past, but not getting it recorded saved face for many. And Astute listeners will say that's very reminiscent of how the House did a voice vote to shoot down Democratic Representative Heather Bauer's amendment to defund the state treasurer's salary. Here's Senator Matthews shortly after that vote and after they adjourned.
But the Senate President was already taking the ayes.
And
so
we do that all the time, and you know we do. Because some people, they just ask for all those in favor. We didn't even, at that point, we hadn't gotten to those opposed yet. So that's why I asked for a roll call, because it was quick.
Mm-hmm. Senate Majority Leader Shane Massey said it turned out to be a good D-Day for his tort reform bill.
I'm hopeful it's going to hold. Now, I do think they're going to offer some amendments to this language because there are a few parts of it that they want to try to tinker with. But we'll see. I mean, I think that everybody understands generally what the amendment does. And now that they have that understanding, we're in a much better position. So, I mean, I feel pretty good about it. But, there'll be other amendments we'll have to debate and vote on, trying to undo some of those things, but we'll see.
That was it for the bill this week, with Wednesday and Thursday Senate floor action absent of tort debate, a nice reprieve. But the next big fight next week will be over joint and several liability, which is a huge crux of this legislation. We're talking about determining who's at fault and for how much, etc. Expect things to get messier. You're going to see alliances change. Votes are going to change. Dogs and cats will be living together. It's going to be like Survivor in the Senate, folks. Now, while the House was in perfunctory session, always a fun word to say, meaning there was no floor activity, there was still plenty of debate happening, especially in the House Education and Public Works Committee, where the anti-DEI bill was amended to make it more legal in some ways and passed out to the full chamber. The amendment to H. 3927 passed Wednesday, and it's more narrowly focused and closely mirrors a provision that lawmakers initially attached to the House budget plan, but was removed by Democrats on a procedural move. Mayan Schechter has been covering this bill and was there during the committee hearing on Wednesday, and she notes that the bill covers higher education institutions, state and quasi-state agencies like the Ports Authority, local school districts, including charter, and local governments, and it prohibits DEI offices, units, divisions, and hiring practices, and does not require someone to be part of a program that, quote, encourages preferential or differential treatment on the basis of race, sex, color, ethnicity, gender, or sexual orientation, quote. The bill does not require faculty or employees of a higher education institution to participate in mandatory training or other education programs dealing with DEI. Supporters of the bill say it will not affect Black History Month and Holocaust education, for example. Columbia Democratic Representative Hamilton Grant spoke against the bill in the meeting and noted how at a previous meeting where hours of testimony was given, not one person spoke in favor of it.
Not one person was for the bill. Not one. We've read and received hundreds of written testimony. And admittedly, I have not read every single piece of testimony. But what I have seen, which is a good number, still not one supportive of the bill. What this says to me and what I am troubled with is we ask taxpayers and voters and constituents and business people, stakeholders of the great state of South Carolina, to come give us their feedback and opinion. And resounding response is they don't like this. Yet we continue to barrel forward when they've already given us their feedback. Which leads me to ask the question again, and I've asked, I think in some of my question, why are we doing this? What is the issue that we are looking to fix? Intentionally, I was asking for examples because if there are examples of schools or quasi-state agencies that are doing this, then maybe I could understand. But the response that was given is we would have to check. We'll have to look. So what that tells me is we don't have definitive proof or evidence that this is currently happening.
The bill no longer targets private businesses that do business with the state, one of the major sections of concern. Ori Republican Representative Tim McGinnis, who shepherded the changes on Wednesday, told reporters he would not have included the contracting provision of the bill.
I think that's where we are as a society right now. And let's face it, we're called representatives for a reason. We represent groups of people. Each of us roughly, started off as 42, but it's probably in many areas closer to 50, even up to 60,000 people now. But we represent the entire state of South Carolina, and we listen to our constituents, and we listen to their concerns. And we come up here and we try to do the best by them. And yeah, when big things happen in society, these social issues, we have to sit back we have to be calm and reasonable as we make policy and as we make law. And I think that the DEI at some point, what started off, I think, noble, became where it took awarding merit away and gave it to awarding more based on your group identity. I don't think this wasn't the place for that. We needed to rein that back in a little bit to say, if you achieve based on your merit and based on your hard work, you deserve, not just because you identify with this group. So as long as we see, I think, this society change and these different issues come up and we know what they are when we see them in the media, and we're so polarized right now, I think it's just important that both parties, just the level heads prevail, and we try to keep the ship straight. And we have to remember that we're one people. We're one South Carolina. We may have different ideas. We may come from different backgrounds, but we're one South Carolina, and we need to get along together. We need to compromise. Politics is the art of compromise, and that's what we did here today. We compromised. We took a bill that we think was a lot of people had big problems with certain parts of it, and we tried to make those problems disappear. And I think we came out with what is a very good piece of legislation.
So stick around for that one. It's now on the House floor, and House lawmakers are back next week. We will see when it moves. We will let you know. But on the way out, we have, as promised, a major 2026 watch.
2026 watch.
We are on the trail officially right now. This is a big one, folks. On Tuesday, Fred West, a self-described seasoned agribusiness leader and lifelong conservative South Carolinian, officially launched his campaign for State Commissioner of Agriculture.
Interesting.
Yes, West enters the race as a Republican with the endorsement of longtime Commissioner Hugh Weathers, who is retiring after 2 decades of service. If you've never heard Commissioner Weathers sing the national anthem, it's second to Whitney, I'll say that, folks. The man is incredible. Now, that's a hard act to follow because that is actually a requisite to be the agriculture commissioner. Now, West wants to fight regulations and, quote, radical environmental policies, quote. He wants to prevent foreign adversaries like China from buying farmland and threatening food security. He also wants a stronger focus on South Carolina-grown products and reduce the reliance on imports that undermine our farmers. And his fourth prong on his platform is protecting consumers from the gas pumps to the restaurants. This is what was said in a press release when he announced. Now, West is a former vice president at Amick Farms and retired in 2023. He currently serves as Director of Market Development at the South Carolina Department of Agriculture. So stay tuned. I know of at least one other Republican who will be jumping in this race. Stay tuned. Welcome to the wind down section, our little break from the news. We're glad you're here. A.T. Shire, lead producer, is here as well, folks.
I'm taking a break with you in solidarity.
But he's still got his finger on the board over there.
Somebody's got to drive this plane. Here we are. And before we get to your adult purchase, adult good news, we have a call from an old friend, a friend who may or may not have lived in my basement. Like
old friend age-wise, or they've been around for a while?
They've been around for a while. They are younger than both of us. But they have lived in my basement, but that doesn't... A few people have lived in my basement this way. Anyway, Gavin, if you're ready, let's get to it.
Yes, take us to the basement.
Mm-hmm.
Gavin, A.T., Cam here, the state newspaper, BB2. I'm just going to shorthand that. That's for the deep heads. That's lead lore right there. A couple topics that you guys touched on that I'm excited about or have thoughts on. Gavin, you mentioned in the pod in the analogy that you made about the liquor liability and tort reform bills, you mentioned a plane headed to Newark. Well, I'm super stoked that Columbia Metropolitan Airport is now going to be offering Spirit Airlines direct flights from Columbia to Newark. Is it the most comfortable? No. Will they charge you at least $30 per bag? Yes. But it is by far the cheapest way to get to the greater New York City area. Previously, I was driving down to Charleston to fly the Spirit direct into Newark. Once you get to Newark, you take the New Jersey Transit train from Penn Station, Newark, into Penn Station in the bottom of Madison Square Garden. It's like $16 each way. By far the best way to get to New York, instead of paying the extra, $100 to $200 to fly direct into JFK or LaGuardia. Tort reform overall, that's not it, folks. I am not a huge fan of tort reform as the means for lowering liquor liability costs in the state. As a bar and restaurant owner, my business partners and I have been researching into this topic for, at this point, about 3 years. And it seems that all the tort reform bills really will do is make it harder for victims and victims' families to get the restitution that they are, deserved whenever there is an accident. We really need caps on these insurance companies. When have you ever heard of an insurance company lowering rates just because they could? So more than anything else, we need caps on insurance. And I don't know a ton else. There are a lot of ins and outs, a lot of strands in the old Deuter's head. But love you both and love what the Lead does for our South Carolina community. Live, laugh, lead. Thank you.
Cam, thank you so much for that beautiful call. It's actually lead, laugh, love, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's a little slip up. It's a little slip up at the end.
It's the thought that counts.
Yep.
Basement Boy 2, love that. And also, thank you for giving the shout out to Columbia Metropolitan Airport, Fly with Ease.
Thank you.
This is dynamic ad
Fly with ease to you.
insertion.
Fly with ease to you, too.
Well, I love to fly with ease.
Yes.
And what a great airline to use in this metaphor. Spirit.
Yeah.
I used to fly Spirit out of Myrtle Beach, an even better metaphor right now, because when I lived in Florence.
That's a hat on a hat. That's a hat on a hat.
Because when I lived in Florence, they had an airport, obviously, but it only flew American to Charlotte, which is fine, but, you could have a little bit more choice if you flew out of Myrtle Beach. But I don't fly Spirit anymore. But I might be tempted now because there are so many different routes. But that's fantastic. We love to fly with ease.
Thank you so much, Cam, for the call.
I've actually have you heard about this? I'm not on TikTok because I don't need any more social media. In fact, I just got off of Twitter, making it official on Blue Sky, Gavin S. Jackson.
To stay on. Yeah.
But I came across, I don't know how I read about this somewhere, but the TikTokers are doing this thing where they're trying to get to the airport 15 minutes before their flight to prove that they can get through to the gate.
I've not heard that before.
And I think it was a Bloomberg video or someone was explaining this. And then also at the same time, while there have been 400 million views on videos related to this hashtag, the number of people Googling what to do when you miss your flight has also jumped exponentially.
Okay, yeah. There's a direct correlation right there.
You could maybe do 15 minutes at Columbia Metropolitan Airport, fly with ease, but I freak out doing that. You never know what you might get. You might get a huge weird influx. For the most part, you can get through in 20 minutes and be fine. But I don't need
that's still
the stress.
Building in 45 minutes.
I don't need the stress. I want to fly with ease.
You can fly with ease when the walk to your gate from the check is 3 minutes. Three. And so if you're having to trek across a giant concourse, maybe to numerous different concourses,
good luck.
That's where your time is. Yeah. That and the big old line. But anyway, Gavin,
my life has also just gotten easier too.
So here you are, Gavin.
So I'm in the Senate antechamber.
It is 10 p.m.
It's Tuesday. And they, like I was talking about, the Senate has broken for this 15-minute break that just continues on into the hours. 3 hours. It's very much like, going up to the International Space Station for a week and then coming back 9 months later. Yeah, we've all been there.
We've all been those
3-hour tour.
Yeah.
So I'm just on my laptop working on things. It's hour 2. I'm getting a little okay, well, I'm kind of done working on things. Let me just mess around on the internet. Have you ever been on the spruce.com? It's a great home website. They do reviews. They do a lot of great gardening, home decor tips. It's a great website.
It really happened to you while you were there, huh?
And I just come across the link for best reviewed vacuum cleaners.
You're speaking Caitlin's language right here.
So I've probably had the same vacuum cleaner, I don't know, like 10, 15 years.
Vintage.
It does the job. It's not crazy.
So you
it's
didn't
a
need a
cord.
new one.
I probably didn't need a new one, but I was ready for a change.
Emotionally.
I needed something to change. I wanted to love vacuuming again. This is a lot to share.
This is new Gavin's
This is a lot
talking.
to share here, but I had fallen away from vacuuming as much as I used to.
And Gavin ran a vacuuming blog back in the day. The Suck, I think it was called.
This is hard, and now that you bring up the Suck, yeah, I mean those were good times. That was like Web 1.0.
Yeah,
I can't believe you knew about that.
Yeah, there was a view counter at the bottom,
and so I was really into it, right? And I bought the best one that I loved, and then I just kind of stopped, you know. But no, I really don't vacuum as much as I used to. The cords. Positioning.
Do you have it yet?
Emptying. Oh, I got it on Thursday. When I say I went home when it was delivered on my lunch break, and you have to charge up that. So it's a cordless one, right? It's upright cordless. It's not a Dyson because I'm not a millionaire anymore. All the egg prices have depreciated my income.
You're fully depleted, tapped out.
Lavoie. It's one of those, there's air purifier company.
I don't know. Lenovo.
Lavoie. Levoit. This was the top rated one on the website.
I love that in this moment, an algorithm came down from heaven and was like, this man needs to clean.
What I was doing,
touched by an angel.
If you want the origin story, I was searching on how to propagate my fiddle leaf fig. So adult right. I'm adulting so hard.
You got on the spruce.
So I'm like, how do I propagate my jade plant and my fiddle leaf fig? And then, sure enough, here's this review for best vacuum cleaners. I'm like, I'm ready to pull the trigger on
I
this.
love how hard you just got advertised to, and it just hit perfectly.
It didn't know I needed it, and then it wasn't advertised. It was an actual review that they did.
You don't even think it was advertising, and yet here it is. You got advertised.
It was a post.
The post saying, when I think of my grandfather, I think of the sound of a vacuum. Yeah.
I was ready for it. And I said, yes, I'll do it. I'll pull the trigger. I'm ready for this adult purchase.
That was old Gavin, and now this is new Gavin.
I'm changed. I'm vacuuming all the time now.
There's going to be
Stay tuned for the Suck to come back.
Such a noted difference from every podcast here on out. Okay, folks?
Oh, I'm going to bring that bad boy in here.
It's just going to be running.
Office.
Yeah.
Well, and the good thing is it's detachable, so now I can clean out the car.
That's so great.
It's going to be fantastic.
There's no wires to mess you up.
Yeah.
It fits perfectly in your lifestyle. It can be your carry-on on your Spirit flights. Yeah. You don't have to stop.
When I fly Spirit, it's the personal item.
Good for you. Good for you, Gavin. If you guys, what's your most unconventional carry-on? Let us know.
Mine's some good adult.
Mine's a Tears for Fears record. Songs from the Big Chair. Anyway, folks, we love you. We love you just like Cam loves us, and we love Cam.
We love you, Cam.
Yes, we love
Thank
you
you
just as much as Cam, even though you haven't lived in our basements. Anyway, folks, have a good weekend.
Got to get to work, clean up the basement. Be like Cam, give us a shout, 803-563-7169. You can always fly with ease at that voicemail. And if you don't want to call us, you can always leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We love that too. And you can stay up to date with the latest news on scetv.org and southcarolinapublicradio.org. And don't forget to support your local newspapers, like the state newspaper, which Cam reads. The South Carolina Lede is a production of South Carolina Public Radio. Our producer is A.T. Shire. Amy Crouch is our supervising producer. Sean Birch is our executive producer. This podcast is produced with support from PRX and is made possible in part by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, as well as listener contributions to the ETV Endowment of South Carolina. For the South Carolina Lead, I'm Gavin Jackson. Be well, South Carolina.
Brendan Fraser's going to be there.
Was it there?
Scorpion King.
Some Scarab King. Yeah, so it's going to be pretty cool.
Rachel Weisz, she'll be there.